Oh, hit the button. Let me see if this works. Test, test, test. Hello, everybody. I'm going to record another podcast episode. Let me share this on a little social media. Hope everybody's having a wonderful morning. I'm going to go see a movie with my son later. Yo, what up, Aboud? What's your name? Aboud Ali? Aboud Ali. Going live to record episode 6 of the podcast. We're going to be discussing the rise of snake oil salesmen. Bip. Where do I want to do this? There we go. Anybody in here? Oh, what up, Sherry? How you doing? Leah Dawn, what's up? All right. So, yeah. I'm going to record another episode. By the way, everybody up in here, make sure you go check it out. I just got the email this morning that I am officially on iTunes. So we're on Spotify. We're on the iTunes podcast thingy. We're on the Google podcast thingy. I'm going to be on SoundCloud too. Anywhere where you can get your listening pleasure, I am here to be there for you. Let me, road trip and getting tired, Brandy. I got you, girl. What's up, Yana Yum Yums? That's a fun name to say. Yana Yum Yums. Yana Yum Yums. And Vampire Sean, what up? All right, here, let me do my little intro thing, and I'm going to be recording the podcast. Everybody who's here, too, like, sometimes I get in a zone with the podcast, and I'm trying to figure it out, because obviously, you know, there's, like, going to be an audio version, and, like, I want to discuss and everything, but you guys are here, too. Mainly, I like doing it, so I'm not, like, just, like, alone talking to myself. I like having people in the chat. So, like, what I try to do is take little breaks and, like, address any questions or comments or anything. So you guys do me a favor. If you guys are hanging out in the podcast, like in this live stream, like if new people come in and say like, hey, is this live? Hey, is he answering questions? Like just let them know like I will come back and address them. You know, I try to take little breaks. The last time I recorded this on the YouTube channel, at the end, after I was done with the podcast episode, I came back and I hit up those questions and everything. Here, let's chat real quick. Perfect timing, road trip. Oh, Brandy, you're awesome. You're a true soldier. Aboud Ali, yo man, do you think Pro Jared should be forgiven? Yeah, like aside from the swapping, like potential alleged swapping with minors, like aside from that, everything else around the cheating, yes, he should be forgiven because I don't even think that was cheating. I think that was polyamory gone wrong. Vegas is nice. It's not super hot yet. Yeah, there we go. Tristan got you. All right, I'm gonna get ready to record this. What is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 6 of A Different Lens podcast. Thank you once again for joining me. And today we're going to be talking about the rise of snake oil salesmen. But before we do that, a little bit of house cleaning, some exciting news. We are on all sorts of podcasting platforms now. So whatever your preference is, baby. Like we are on Spotify, we are on Google Podcasts, we are on the iTunes Store. We're going to be on SoundCloud. Make sure you're following me at The Rewired Soul on Instagram and Twitter. That's where I post all the updates and everything like that. And yeah, for right now, I'm still recording these on my YouTube channel. So if you would like to come join the live streams or check out the other stuff I'm doing on the YouTube channel is The Rewired Soul. All right. But anyways, this is a topic that I've been meaning to discuss, wanting to discuss and everything like that. And it's partially to do with, you know, it being 2019 and kind of like the self-help genre, the motivational genre, the inspirational genre. And in 2019, like we are for the most part a society that loves science, believes in science and everything like that. And that's a great thing. But where does self-help, motivation, like I guess the question is, should we listen to people? Should we take their advice if they are not backing it up with science, okay? So one of the reasons I wanted to do this is I'm currently reading a book by just one of my favorite authors, and I wish this dude had more books, but I just got into his website. And this is a guy by the name of Mark Manson, okay? So Mark Manson, he is the best-selling author of the book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. And he just released a new book called Everything is Fucked. And I sit there because, and I look and I analyze a lot of things, because when I look at somebody like Mark Manson, okay, this is just a dude, okay? Just a little history about Mark Manson. He was originally, when he was younger, he wanted to be a musician, and he just kind of fell out of that, and then he just started writing. He just started writing a ton, blogging a ton, just talking about like self-improvement, self-growth. I dig the guy because he follows a lot of Buddhist philosophy, which I'm a huge fan of and everything. And I sit there and I look at Mark Manson, I'm like, okay, like this guy is doing something that I want to do, right? I want to create, whether it's videos, podcasts, I've written a few books. I'm like, how do I do what this guy has done? He is helping people improve their lives, but he's not a therapist, he's not a psychologist or anything like that. But then I start thinking about, this rise of what people deem snake oil salesmen, all right? And that there's like this balance to be had, because let's talk about the history of snake oil salesmen. Like, we've all heard the term, but let's just go back in time real quick. So way back in the day, like you think of like Westerns and stuff like that. Like, I believe that's where it started. Like, don't quote me on this. I'm not like a huge like history buff. But anyways, these guys would travel from town to town, these salesmen, right? And they would call them snake oil salesmen because they would sell this stuff like snake oil, and they say, this will cure all of your remedies. This will cure anything that you're dealing with. You got polio? Boom, some snake oil. Oh, you're sad? Boom, some snake oil, right? Like anything you got, snake oil will solve it, right? And the reality was that these things didn't do shit, okay? So that's where the term snake oil salesman came from, but I feel like it's been overused, okay? Now, something very interesting, as I was talking about that, and in the chat, Sherry just said, it's like the placebo effect. Let me talk to you guys real quick about the placebo effect, okay? So, again, we are like a society of science and everything like that, but like, in my opinion, what's wrong with the placebo effect? Like, what's wrong with it? Okay, like there is a major mind-body connection that I don't think enough people realize or enough people talk about. So for example, I read a book called The Happiness Advantage, and it's from a dude who is the professor of psychology named Shawn Achor. He's done a ton of studies, just a ton of studies. So check this out. He's done a ton of studies, or he cites a lot of studies. So there was a study where what they did was they talked with housekeepers. Okay, housekeepers, I can't remember, maybe they were like at a hotel or something, and they split them up into two groups, okay? So the first group, they didn't tell anything, okay? That's the control group. They just said, hey, do your thing, we're gonna monitor you, they were gonna monitor their weight. Now the second group of people, what they did was, they told these housekeepers how many calories per day on average they were burning just by doing their everyday job, okay? Now, keep this in mind. All they did was tell a set of housekeepers how many calories they were burning a day just by doing their job. They followed these housekeepers for, I can't remember the exact time frame, a couple weeks, months, whatever it was. And the group that they didn't tell anything didn't lose any weight for the most part, on average. Now, the group of housekeepers that they told were losing weight based on their work, these housekeepers were actually losing weight. So think of, like, I just want you guys to think about how powerful the mind-body connection is. By just obtaining the knowledge that you are losing weight by doing your job, help these housekeepers lose weight. There's a very strong mind-body connection. So when we talk about the placebo effect, like my whole thing is like, does it matter? You know, like, does it matter if there's a placebo effect? You know, like, way back in the day where the origin of the placebo effect came from. So what they did was I can't remember when this was, but anyways, back in the day, there were like people who were struggling with chronic pain. So what they did was they took like this metal rod, and they wrapped it in like leather or something like that, and they like waved it over people, and they said it was helping to heal them. And a lot of people's pain started to get reduced, right? And then come to find out, like, I guess some other doctors or researchers around that time, this was like 1800s or something, they looked into it and they're like, oh, this is just a normal rod, like, didn't really do anything, you know what I mean? But anyways, the thing is, our mind, our body believes the story that it is told, okay? So I think it's very important. Like, so when we talk about snake oil salesmen, when we talk about, placebo effects, it's important to know, like, if somebody believes something, their body and their mind will follow that. You know what I'm saying? Like we can't just totally write that off. Like, that's very, very, very powerful. Like, that's extremely powerful. Like, there's another amazing book called Lost Connections. And by the way, I'll try to link all the books I talk about in the description below of this podcast. But there's a book called Lost Connections, and it talks about, like, they've done studies. There's been massive amount of studies, and antidepressants actually don't work nearly as well as people think they do. All right, so there's something called the Hamilton scale, and they use this Hamilton scale to determine how good or bad your depression is. So when you get further along on the scale, the happier you are. Like, think of it as like a scale of 1 to 10, but they use like plus and minus and everything like that. But anyways, so like antidepressants, things like Prozac and Zoloft and things like that, right? On average, on the Hamilton scale, it moves you like, I think, like 1.3 points, right? So that's how much an antidepressant moves you. So then when they followed people who were just getting a better night's sleep, it moved them a total of 4 points, okay? So like, think about that real quick. Getting your sleep schedule on point is more effective than an antidepressant. Like, I want you guys, like, I'm glad we're talking about this to kind of start this podcast, because again, in the self-help motivation genre, people keep labeling it as, being snake oil salesmen, right? Like, somebody could look at Mark Manson and call him a snake oil salesman for the advice or motivation he gives. Somebody I follow, is Gary Vaynerchuk. People call him a snake oil salesman. And like, one of the things that kind of irritates me about just the way our society works and everything like that is, the question is, why do we think we know better than a person's experience, right? So imagine this. Like, everybody sit back and imagine this. Imagine you telling a friend, like, oh man, I've been eating fruits and vegetables more, and I feel better. I feel more energized, I feel more this, and then someone comes up to you and say, no, that doesn't work. That, like what? Like, how can you tell somebody what their experience is? So that's kind of what bothers me. When you look at this whole genre of people in the self-help atmosphere or whatever, is the people who call them snake oil salesmen and everything like that, they're completely neglecting every single man and woman that these people have helped. Like, how are you just going to deny people their experience? Like, there are people who follow these motivational speakers or whoever it is who say, this person's book or this person's podcast or this person's YouTube videos or whatever it is, it helped change my life. It inspired me to go to therapy. It inspired me to start going to the gym. It inspired me to do this. And then you have this whole group of assholes coming in and saying, no, their advice is not scientifically proven and they're giving dangerous advice. It's like, wait, what? Like, how are you going to tell somebody, like, for example, like, just the person I can think of off the top of my head is somebody like Gary Vaynerchuk. While I don't agree with everything Gary Vaynerchuk says, like, if I looked at some of his core things that he says, one of them is talking about, hustle is the only thing that you really have control over, right? Like, you don't necessarily have control over the circumstances in your life, if you've been oppressed, if you've been this, or the neighborhood you grew up in, or the family you have, or whatever. But the one thing that you have control over is your work ethic, how hard you work, right? And that's true to an extent, right? And with every piece of advice, there is always somebody who can swoop in and say, well, in this one fringe case, that doesn't help, right? But what he's saying is, if you want to achieve something, the only thing that you have complete control over is how much effort you put into this, right? And we could dissect this and get into the little nuances of it, like, oh, well, I'm a single parent of 15 kids and da-da-da-da. It's like, okay, but during your downtime, you can maximize that downtime, right? Or somebody like Mark Manson. Mark Manson pulls from Buddhist philosophy. He pulls from some of the greatest thinkers of all time to kind of formulate his ideas on how people can improve their lives. And that's something else I want to talk about too, is although I don't think enough people respect history. And even though I was just saying I'm not some history nerd, like, I respect history and where we've come from. So something I've been recently getting into a lot is philosophy. So we got to think back thousands of years, back to ancient Greece, ancient Rome. Okay, before we had neuroscience, before we had modern psychology, before we had antidepressants and everything like that, you had things like Buddhist philosophy. You had things like Stoicism, all right? You had these ancient philosophies where all they were doing was trying to teach people a better design for living, okay? That's what they were trying to teach people. And that's all they had. And still to this day, some of the greatest minds, even the greatest psychologists, the greatest philosophers, they are pulling from these ancient people like Marcus Aurelius, Socrates, Plato. You know what I mean? They pull quotes from these people who changed the game on how we live, right? So when I see people in 2019 talking about quote unquote snake oil salesmen, why is it that we don't give people today the same respect that some of the greatest minds throughout history were receiving before science became such a thing? And don't worry, I'm gonna dive into science because I respect the fuck out of science, all right? But I want you guys to think about that. Like, if Socrates was alive today, if Marcus Aurelius was alive today, if the Buddha was alive today, like, would people say, hey, where's your scientific evidence behind this shit, right? Like, they literally would. They literally would. If you transplanted the best thinkers in history to today, they would get absolutely shit on by Twitter and society. They would say, who's this person? Where's your scientific evidence behind this, right? So I think it's important to understand that there are people today who are modern day philosophers and taking ideas that aren't necessarily bad ideas. Now, that isn't to say that nobody out there gives bad advice. Like, I see a ton of people giving terrible advice. And when we talk about snake oil, that's the other thing too. So, like, when we talk about snake oil salesmen in modern times, like, sometimes it's just our own lack of research. So I see a lot of people do this, like, their lack of understanding on a subject makes them label something snake oil. And it's like, but yeah, like, you don't know what you don't know. Okay, here's a funny story. All right, everybody sit down, relax, get comfortable. Here's a funny story. I won't name names. Some people might know this situation, but I'm not going to name names. So I have almost 1,000 videos on my channel. And anybody who understands the full context of me and what I believe in, what I stand for, and mental health and all that, I am not anti-medication. I am on Lexapro, okay? Lexapro is a non-narcotic, antidepressant, anti-anxiety medication. Now, although I am on a non-narcotic medication, it is silly to say that the United States, like, it would be silly to think that the United States does not overprescribe medications. The United States does overprescribe medications. Like, if you look at the data comparing the United States to other countries, we prescribe more medications than just about anybody. Like not like obviously pain medications, like look at the opioid epidemic, but even mental health medications. Like, and I believe a video I made was talking about how meditation, like peer-reviewed studies show how meditation can help with symptoms of ADHD, all right? And this is scientifically proven, all right? It's scientifically proven that meditation can help with symptoms of ADHD, because ADHD is like, and I'm just kind of like summarizing ADHD, it's way more complex than what I'm about to say, but ADHD is a problem with your ability to control your attention, all right? So one of the misconceptions about ADHD is that people who have ADHD cannot focus. Well, in many cases of people who have ADHD, they can focus. The problem is they don't get to choose what they focus on. So a lot of people with ADHD are very driven and motivated. Like, if you give them something that they are excited about, or if they are passionate about, they will lock into that and they will work on it for hours, but they might not like math. So anyways, meditation is about training your prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for attention, okay? So, anyways, I make a video and I discuss that a little bit. I discuss that idea a little bit. And I discuss, peer-reviewed studies that show this. And I think in that video too, I even showed, I even pulled from an actual study. Well, somebody ended up making a video about me. This was somebody who struggles with ADHD. And they made a video about me talking about how for ADHD you have to have medications. And then this person said, I don't care about your and they used air quotes and they said peer-reviewed studies. That doesn't matter. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh my God. And again, you don't know what you don't know. So what I'm getting at is there are people who will call a practice like meditation snake oil, even though if you presented them with the scientific evidence behind it, they would see that it's not snake oil. It is something that is scientifically proven, okay? And it's important to look at things like peer-reviewed studies because, for example, medications, ones that are like ADHD medications and depression medications and everything like that, even though the pharmaceutical industry is just like utterly fucked, most of them get studied by multiple people. It goes through, different, the FDA and everything like that, the Food and Drug Administration. So that's the thing, like, people, for lack of better words, people use their ignorance. Like, when you combine ignorance with like a subtle, like, kind of touch of narcissism, narcissistic symptoms, not a diagnosis, but just this kind of ego-driven, like, I know fucking everything, So when you combine ignorance with somebody who thinks they're the shit and knows everything, you have a very dangerous person. You have somebody who can spread misinformation just because they have not researched a certain subject. And one of the things that you will see with some of the greatest minds out there is that they admit that they don't know everything, right? I remember Dr. Mike from YouTube and Instagram and everything like that. Like he did a video with Gabby Hanna a while back where he talked about how, doctors who act like they know everything, are not good doctors, because he talks about how when he got his PhD, he actually had more questions than he did answers. So this is why, it's very dangerous when people who aren't equipped with all the information to act like they know everything, right? And to not be open to, one of the most dangerous things any of us can ever have is just this very firm stance and not take in any new information. Like if you're living a life where new information on a subject, like any subject, even if it's just a specific subject, if you receive new information, new data on a subject, and your opinion is still unwavering, that is a gigantic problem. Whenever I talk about this, I always think about how there was this, it might have been on one of those late night talk shows or something like that. But anyways, they went around and they interviewed Trump supporters, I think at a Trump rally. And basically what they asked them is, they were saying is there anything Trump could do that would make you not support him anymore? And they said, no, absolutely not. And that is extremely scary. Okay, not just because it's Trump, but I look at that in kind of a broader sense, right? For anybody out there to say, if you were presented with any information on this person, would it ever change your opinion? And you're like, no, right off the top of my head, I can think of a lot of reasons that I would not support anybody anymore, or a specific person anymore, right? So if anything, we always have to be open to new ideas, new information, new things. When I bring up that subject, I think about my son, right? My son, my little mini me, the human being that I am, I love unconditionally, and I try to think, is there anything this kid could do, right? That I wouldn't support him anymore. Now, I think it's important to say, when it comes to a child, I have an unconditional love for him, but I might not support him. And here's what I mean. And see, this is the point of the podcast, to kind of walk through different ideas and topics and things like that. But think about Jeffrey Dahmer's parents, right? They might still love their son, but they're not going to support their son who was a serial killer and eating people. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's important to say okay, I still love this person as a human being or as my child or my family member, but I do not support what they are doing, okay? So again, it's important for all of us, when we are presented with new facts, evidence, information, it's important for us to reassess the situation. It's the same thing when it comes to our personal lives. And sorry, I'm straying off topic a little bit, but this does involve self-help. Something Mark Manson said, I was listening to his interview on the Impact Theory, podcast or show. It's a YouTube channel. And the last question is what, the host, Tom something, he asked Mark Manson, he says, what do you want your impact on this world to be? And Mark Manson says, he wants his impact on this world to be, and this is why I fucking love that guy, because I can definitely relate. He wants his impact on this world to be just to help people foster the ability to change their perception on different situations, whether it's life, mental health, or anything like that. So anyways, let's get back to you. Let's get back to you, the viewer, you, the listener, right? Here's another reason why it's so important to be able to change your thoughts, your opinions, right? based on new information and new data. Let's say you grew up in a household where you were told that you suck, right? Maybe you had like an abusive dad, an abusive mom, and they're like, you're a piece of shit, you'll never amount to anything, da-da-da-da-da, okay? That was your reality. For years and years and years, you had some emotionally asshole-ish parents, right? They told you this narrative, okay? So now let's say you get older, all right? Let's say you graduate high school. Let's say you graduate college. Let's say you find a man or woman that falls madly in love with you, marries you, wants to spend the rest of their lives with you. But you still hate yourself based on the shitty things that your mom and or dad said to you, all right? Okay, I'm sorry they are doing some landscaping outside, so I'm hoping my voice overpowers that. But anyways, what I'm saying is, you have to be able to change your view and opinion of yourself based on the new information that you have. Like, is it possible? Like, something Mark Manson is a huge advocate of is questioning your own thoughts and perceptions and feelings of yourself. Like, is it possible that you're not a piece of shit? Is it possible that you're not a terrible person? Is it possible that you are lovable? Is it possible that you are a decent human being? Is it possible that you are deserving of love? Is it possible that you are deserving of a good life? Is it possible that you can learn and grow and become a better person? Like, this is why we have to constantly question things, question our own thought process. Because as new data, as new information comes in, we have to be able to change our thoughts, views, and opinions on things, all right? So, getting back to snake oil salesmen, one of the reasons I think that this has become such an issue today and people are so adamantly against the self-help genre or motivational genre is because of science. And like, trust me, like, science is my shit. Science is the shit. So here's how I kind of walk through different things. When I'm presented with new information, right, with anything new, just about anything new, like what I'm talking about is different things to improve mental health. Maybe it's like dieting, maybe it's whatever. One of the first thing I ask is like, okay, where's the science behind this? Like, it's so bad for me. So if anybody thinks that I'm not a fucking fan of science, like, let me explain how bad it is for me. This is how much I love and appreciate science and how bad this gets. So any of you who have followed me for a while, I fucking love books. I love books. Books are my shit. So I'm constantly looking for new books to read to increase my own knowledge and everything like that. And depending on the subject matter of that book, I check to see what year it was written, okay? And here's why. Because although science is sometimes a slow-moving process, there is science from 10 years ago that is completely different today. So depending on the subject matter, it is difficult for me to really take in a book if I know that the science is not up to date, so I don't even fucking read that book. And I've been trying lately. I've been trying to like read older books, like, okay, let me understand the history of psychology or the history of this, right? And it's really hard for me to get into it because I'm like, okay, all of this has changed. Like, I don't know what's wrong with me. I need to figure that shit out. But that is how much I fucking love science, right? Like, if I'm looking up, like, sometimes I'll just type in, like, to, you know, Amazon or just Google and try to find, like, list on, like, mental health books or psychology books or whatever it is. And if that book is not within the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, hell, sometimes if it's not within the last year or two, I just write it off and don't look at it. So anyways, just trust me. When I say that I think science is a major problem, I am somebody who really appreciates science. And I think this comes from my 12-step background because I stayed in my addiction for so fucking long because I would sit in there and I'd be like, where's the science behind this? Where's the science behind the 12 steps and, you know, spirituality and da-da-da-da-da? But I was that person who I'm talking about. I didn't know what I didn't know. Like, now I can present you with scientific evidence about how people who pray or meditate, I think I did a video on this a while back, how people who pray or meditate, there's actually scientific evidence of what happens with their brain and how that works. But anyways, when I went into 12-step programs, I was completely ignorant, and I was just like, okay, well, where's the science behind this? I'm not gonna get a sponsor or read a book or work any steps because there's no science behind it. Little did I know there actually was. I was just too fucking lazy and stubborn to go do that research. But I think it's important for all of us to respect science while also understanding that science doesn't have all the answers yet, right? Like the hubris of some people, not even some people. One of my favorite things is people who aren't scientists, like I'm not a fucking scientist, right? And they just talk about how like science is infallible, and they're not a fucking scientist. Here's what I mean by that. Like, if you follow science, like if you're a true science nerd, you find, like, you see how science is constantly discovering new things. Like, imagine if an actual scientist thought they had all the answers. Science would literally come to a standstill, right? If there was nothing new to discover, science would come at a standstill, right? Because science is this pursuit of finding out what we don't know. Here's a great example. Wherever you are, whether you're watching this or you're listening to this podcast, pick up an object. Pick up an object. Okay, so I'm holding my wallet. For anybody who's watching this, I'm holding my wallet. 1,000 years ago, 100 years ago, you would look at this wallet and you would say, okay, this wallet is a wallet. It's solid. I can't poke through it. This is a solid object. Well, now comes the fucking high-powered microscopes, and as I zoom in on this thing isn't solid at all. This thing is a mass of whirling electrons and atoms just fucking spinning around at speeds I can't even fathom to give the appearance of being a solid object, okay? So up until we were able to study atoms, we thought these things were completely solid. So again, science is constantly trying to improve and discover things that we didn't know. Like, could you imagine if scientists were like, no, that's solid, that's all we need to know, fuck that, right? Imagine if people said, no, flying is impossible, you can't fucking fly, so don't even try it. Imagine if they just stopped there. So like, that's how, like, in my opinion, that's how you find somebody who uses science as an excuse to be an asshole, but they don't really respect science. Because science is constantly improving and trying to discover new things that we don't even know about. Like, it wasn't until, what was it, last year or the year before, where they finally, like Albert Einstein had theories about fucking, like, what was it? It was some, like, ripple in space and time. Like, Albert Einstein had theories about that, and this was like 100 years ago, and it wasn't until like a year or two ago that we actually discovered that he was right. You see what I mean? What if they just said, no, Albert Einstein, you're a fucking idiot. We're not gonna investigate that any further. You know what I mean? And what just happened, like, what was it? Was it this year? I think it was this year. They just got the first photograph of like a black hole, and it was like, oh, you know? Like, so that's what kind of just makes me laugh about people who, like, quote unquote, respect science, but they don't understand that science is constantly pursuing things that they don't know, right? And it seems like people use science as an excuse to stop educating themselves, to stop learning about things and everything like that. But here's the thing that other people don't understand when it comes to science and neuroscience and everything. So, getting back to snake oil salesmen and psychology and science and everything like that, here's a great example, Buddhism. So Buddhism is a practice that is thousands of years old, okay? Like, not Buddhism as a whole, but meditation, right? And I'm always trying to get people to meditate. I'm always like, hey, you know, just try it. Just fucking get an app, try meditating 5 minutes a day. Set a reminder, like I have an Apple Watch now, I can set it to remind myself to breathe and shit like that, and I just try to tell people to try it, right? And people are like, no, fuck that. Well, here's the thing. Like, one of my favorite favorite scientists out there is Dr. Judson Brewer. He has a great book called The Craving Mind. I'll also link that down below, all right? So anyways, in the Craving Mind, like he talks about, or if you follow any of his like other videos or podcasts that he's done, they have hooked people up to brain scans, all right? If you guys can see me on the video, I'm kind of like holding my head and waving it around. Anyways, they have hooked people up to brain scans and discovered that regular meditation actually strengthens your prefrontal cortex. So there is science behind it. So now let's kind of bring this shit all together. You have Mark Manson, who is an author who follows Buddhist philosophy, right? Mark Manson is not a licensed therapist, he's not a licensed psychologist, but he is in the quote-unquote self-help genre, and he follows Buddhist philosophy, okay? So some people look at Mark Manson and say, this motherfucker is a snake oil salesman. Well, if you did research, you would understand that Mark Manson follows Buddhist philosophy, and like I just told you, science agrees with Buddhist philosophy of meditation and how it helps to fucking improve your cognitive function. The other thing that people don't understand too is, and again, this comes from ignorance and not knowing what you don't know, but when you look at evidence-based therapies such as cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy, these are all rooted in mindfulness, okay? These are rooted in mindfulness, which comes from Buddhist philosophy. So, oh man, I'm glad I did this topic because this is a lot of venting that I had to do. Like, so when you see people running around talking about, you know, snake oil salesmen, when you see them talking about how like motivational speakers, like it's just something that we really need to question. And the person who's talking down about those things, like who the fuck are they? You know what I mean? Like, who are they? What books have they read? What have they brought to the argument, right? And like, trust me, I love to debate. It's just sad because we're living in a time right now where a debate can quickly turn into an argument, right? Like, I've noticed that, especially on Twitter, and I just fucking pull out of that, like, okay, I'm done with this. Because when you present somebody with a counter argument for like a debate, it turns like vicious, right? They start attacking your character. But like, that's the issue. Like, people, if there's anything I want you guys to take away from this, it's a couple things. One of them, don't knock the self-help genre. It's been around for thousands of years and proven to work. And two, be willing to change your opinions, your perceptions of things as you are presented with new data and new information, okay? Like, that's what I want everybody to take away from this. So while I do love books about neuroscience, while I do love books about psychology and evidence-based treatments, I do also appreciate the self-help genre, because every now and then I find a fucking gem like Mark Manson, who is not a scientist, who is not a psychologist. He is just somebody who has a wealth of knowledge and has figured out a way to put that all together and help people improve their lives, all right? And that is something that I am trying to aspire to be, you know? Like, I constantly try to think of like, how do I become somebody like Mark Manson? Like, I need to shoot that guy an email. Maybe one of my goals that I will set is to try to do like an episode of the podcast with that dude. I just checked he's doing a book tour and everything. But anyways, like I said, I have some books I'm gonna link down in the description below. Another book I'm gonna link in the description of the podcast is one called Why Buddhism is True. And it's a book written by, I forgot the author's name, but I'll put it down in the description. But he is an evolutionary psychologist, right? And what this genre, what this genre of psychology is, they look at human evolution, right? From cavemen to the modern times, and they understand how our brain develops. And this is an entire book explaining Buddhist philosophy and mixing it with how, now that we know how the human brain and mind developed, Buddhism is like what these guys, like what, the Buddha and his followers and everything, what they thought, what they assumed about, the human mind is actually true, all right? Based on what we know in modern day psychology and everything like that. So anyways, like, keep trying to expand your knowledge, remember that you don't know everything. I don't know everything. Like, life would be boring as fuck if we just stopped learning and trying to expand our minds. So don't be that guy. Don't be that gal. Always try to learn. Always try to see what new things you can gain. Because again, science would not progress if scientists were the type of assholes who thought they knew everything. They're constantly trying to discover new information, and you should too. All right? So anyways, that's all I got for episode 6. Don't forget, the podcast is now available on Spotify and Google Podcasts and on the iTunes podcast. I'm about to put this thing up on SoundCloud. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram and Twitter at The Rewired Soul so you get all the updates and everything like that. And if you're not yet, make sure you are subscribed to the YouTube channel. I do an insane amount of videos over there, and this is a video version. The video version of this podcast is up over there, and the YouTube channel is The Rewired Soul. You can also get a bunch of information at my website, therewiredsoul.com. So thanks again for listening. I'll see you on the next one. All right, everybody, I'm just going to hang out on the live and catch up on your things real quick. Thanks for hanging out. I saw some of your comments. I'm glad you guys are in here. Like, oh my Lanta, I love your analogies. Thanks. That's what I try to do. I try to take things, and sometimes my analogies really miss the fucking mark. But I try to take things that we're already thinking about and just kind of relate them to one another and just ask, like, why is this but not this, right? Or why do we accept this but we don't accept this, you know? Oh, thanks. My channel is missing a lot. Okay. All right, you guys are all amazing. Hold on, let me switch to chat. All right, yeah, I got to get ready and take off. I got things to do, people to see. Have a wonderful Friday, everybody. Keep trying to expand your knowledge. You're all amazing. My hair is crazy. This is what Tristan gets to live with. Look at that. Wait, can you guys see it? Can you guys see what I'm doing with my hair? Anyways, I love you all so much. Tell your friends about the podcast. You guys, if you're in here, do me a favor. If you're in here, go follow my podcast on different platforms. If you can, leave a review too. And the reason I ask that is it helps promote the podcast to like more people. So if you like it, leave a review and everything like that. So yeah, and thank you, Jeannie J. Butler. Or did I say that right? I'm sorry if I butchered your name. But anyways, tell your friends about the podcast. Like, just do me a favor. Even if you don't want to listen to this on iTunes or Spotify or anything, it helps me out if you just follow it because it helps promote it. Or if you leave a review, that would, I would be forever in your debt. All right? You are all beautiful. You are all amazing. Have a happy rest of your Friday. I'll see y'all later.